You're live.
Good evening, everybody. Excuse me, but you all look as little as though you're having your photo taken for America's Most Wanted.
Free speech.
Conversation of free speech.
Exactly. Oh dear. Okay. So you're going to introduce everybody.
Oh yes. Well,
that would help.
We did. Yes. So hi everybody. I'm Orla.
And I'm Tracy.
So we have.
Self-introducing.
Carry on, Tanya.
We're self-introducing. So I'm Tanya.
Yeah.
I'm from Finland today.
Tomorrow.
Okay.
Anna.
Hi, my name's Anna and I'm from the Gold Coast, Australia.
Mandy.
Hi, my name's Mandy and I'm from Tasmania, Australia.
We think. And Tandawe.
Hi, I'm Tandiwe and I'm from Lusaka, Zambia.
And hi, I'm Helen. And I don't know where the hell I'm from at the moment.
It's somewhere nice.
But
Somewhere nice.
it just is what it is. What we're talking about tonight, we're carrying on from a month ago when we talked about free speech, but with more of a flow towards expectations around free speech and ego as it connects to free speech. Before we get into it, we tried to boost last month's talk on free speech to promote it to other people. Facebook would not allow it. How interesting that a talk on free speech got blocked.
And a talk on free speech within a place that would talk about connecting community and creating community, yet doesn't want to share the voice
Of the community.
part of the community. Yeah, yeah.
So that's what I'm throwing in there, but that's not necessarily what we're all talking about. I'm sure you've all got something you would like to contribute about ego and expectations, and or versus, it doesn't matter, and around free speech. So I'm going to throw it open for whoever wishes to begin the conversation.
Well, I had an interesting experience surrounding this that was a few months ago when the Black Lives Matter was all aflame and everyone was all passionate about it. And John had just done a talk where he was talking about this issue, and he made the statement, all lives matter. And it's something that I fervently agree with as well. And as you know, there was a lot of information going around on social media about how saying all lives matter was a really terrible and racist thing to say. But I decided to stick my neck out, and I created a little meme using some of my artwork where I said all lives matter and all stand equal before the divine. Those were the words that I used. Well, did I get an interesting experience. Particularly, it was interesting on Facebook. It was all fine because Facebook has an older audience. But when I put the meme on Instagram, I got a whole lot of younger people that just went to town on me. And I said, okay, well, they're allowed to voice their opinions also. And I didn't argue back with them. But the comment that I just said was, this is my opinion. And I just believe that everyone is equal, regardless of race. And these people started really attacking me and telling me how I was not allowed to say that, how it was wrong, and that their opinion was right. And their egos just went to town. And I even had people that started sending me hate mail and attacking me on other platforms. And so I had to block them. I tried to talk to them privately, but they were sending a lot of very aggressive stuff on my public feed. I tried to just, speak to them rationally, but there was no rationality happening from their side. It was just, you must remove your post and you must say this and you are not allowed to say that. And it was like the whole concept of free speech had just gone. They were right, and their ego believed that it was their right to shut me down and to tell me what to do and what I could say and what I couldn't say. So it was a very interesting exercise that really brought to home how free speech in this world has really, really depleted.
I don't think there is such a thing as free speech anymore, I'll be honest. And I think it's a shame that we can't. Black Lives Matter. Let's be clear, Black Lives Matter. But in America at the moment also, Asians are being attacked. Polynesians have been attacked here. Brown Lives Matter. You're right, I agree with you, Tanya. All lives matter. All lives are important and equal. But you're not going to bring that about if you can't talk about it. If the moment you try to open up a conversation, you're told you're white privilege, which I heard somebody accused of being. I mean, I've never been accused of it, but then we've never had this kind of conversation before, so perhaps I am white privileged, I don't know. It's about people matter, in actual fact. All people matter. And if we can't discuss and debate, how can we learn from each other, and how can we grow with each other? Tandy, what do you feel about this?
So I remember I saw Tanya's post about the All Lives Matter, and
Tanya, you're in trouble.
I have to admit, my hackles went up because I think when somebody says Black Lives Matter, and then somebody else says All Lives Matter, in my opinion, you're negating the experience that Black people face when it comes to law enforcement. So maybe my ego coming in, and I don't mean to preach at you, but I would prefer people to say all lives matter, but we do appreciate the discrimination that certain races face. I think for me, when you add that tag, I then understand that that the Black Lives Matter started as a protest for the way that Black people are treated by law enforcement in the US, and it's just a protest against that, and it's just telling them to treat Black people in America equally to every other race, I think.
Is it color or is it race? How about that for a question? And we weren't going to talk about this specifically, but it's a good point of free speech. Is it about color or is it about race? Is it just phrased badly?
Yes, I think it's phrased very badly, and I think it's the same way that defund the police is phrased badly. Yeah, I can't think of a better way to phrase it, but the phrasing is very, very misleading. Yeah.
All lives matter, and discrimination is reprehensible. Except, what does reprehensible mean? A lot of people might not know.
Really unacceptable.
All lives matter, and discrimination is totally unacceptable. But free speech is important, because if you can't express, so when everything went off about George Floyd, the peaceful protests were brilliant, and then they got hijacked, or at least that's what I understood. They got hijacked. And at that point, people stopped listening, because all of a sudden, the whole energy got crashed. So so this is where I'm coming from. Was the people that did the protests, were they in expectation that their voice would be heard? And the people that crashed the protests and turned it around, was that their ego saying, well, now we're going to do payback? How about that for a question?
That's a great question. That's a really good question.
Helen, when you say hijacked, do you mean the people who politically hijacked it, the movement?
No, I mean the protesters. Most of the protesters initially, they were angry, but they were peaceful.
Right.
Yeah.
They were peaceful. They were expressing their anger, which I think was important. We all need to express when we're angry. But then what happened was this energy came into it,
Mm.
and then it stopped being a peaceful protest, and it became an attack.
Mm.
And so we had shops attacked and looted, and
Mm.
people within the protest were attacked by the other people within.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that well, sorry, Anna, I'm going.
Yeah, that changed everything. I remember. Reading about a woman. Actually, she was an Australian woman that lived in America at the time, and she was so afraid. She saw busloads of mischief makers, be dropped off in her neighbourhood just to make menace, just to run around and it was like it just diffused, and put a focus, a wrong focus on something that actually initially started well. And I believe there was an enormous efforts, to keep that, to try and keep that peaceful, in the beginning, enormous efforts to keep it together.
Yeah.
But if you go back, we've lost Tandy. She's not left in disgust at the conversation. She did say that her internet was a bit of a difficulty. Yeah. But this is what happened in Hong Kong with the protests in Hong Kong too.
That's what I was going to say.
China sent in, purportedly, sent in busloads of troublemakers, so that the protests stopped being peaceful protests in Hong Kong and they became violent.
And it was political. So the peaceful protests start, they're getting somewhere. The government or whoever the powers there be don't want them to get somewhere. They don't want people to be on their side. They throw in agitators. The agitators upset everybody. And suddenly there's a big tidal wave that goes, actually, we don't like this protest in any way, shape or form. And now it's us versus them.
Well, because people become afraid that it's unruly people.
Yeah.
And so the whole purpose of what's happening. So if you take it out of, she's still trying to get in though.
Yeah.
If we take it out of specifics, how does expectation and ego come into it? Because Sarupa's made a valid point. That energy of sending people in to, no, not that one, the one above. It's coming into all, we're just saying, Tandy, if the same thing happened in Hong Kong, the protesters had a message, they were peaceful, and then the authorities sent in busloads of troublemakers, and it became violent, and it became so violent that people stopped supporting them. So you disrupt it. You don't allow that free speech of those people their voices to be heard. So you take it away from specifics. Hang on, what's this? Wow.
Let me see this. I'm wondering who this is. Do you want me to put it up?
This one, recently, I don't know who it is. I recently learned that in Chinese medicine, this might be David, grief, joy, sadness are all heart expressions, but when they leave the heart, anger becomes rage, grief becomes anguish, sadness becomes depression. Those who demonstrated later were not coming from the heart. I think that's absolutely accurate.
Yeah,
I think that's really true. I think at the time, George Floyd's family, for example, said, we don't want violence.
Yeah.
And they kept appealing to people respectfully to protest his death.
Yeah.
And people hijacked. That's what I'm saying. People hijacked it. They used it for their own purposes and not for the purposes that it was initiated. So is that ego? Is it expectation?
That was
Sharon.
Sharon, yeah.
That was Sharon. Okay, Sharon, thank you very much. From me, Sharon. Yeah. We're not talking to you anymore, Sharon, because this is about free speech. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that just to answer Helen's, I think that is ego because hearing the statistics of, say, the America demonstrations, etc., that the protesters were taken out of context. It was actually a small amount by comparison to the months of preparation and the whole, there's so many people within America, standing on this platform and wanting some changes, real changes. But of course, the media has blown out the minority, because it's sensational, that's the emotional body, that's all of that stuff. And definitely, they've not been in the heart, exactly what I think you said, David said, and that totally agree with that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like she's left.
Yeah, she said goodbye.
She said goodbye. She'll come back.
But the interesting thing about the free speech, even with what we've talked about, is that so with the Black Lives Matter, All Lives Matter, that misunderstanding because the Black Lives Matter wasn't phrased well. If that can be discussed, then people go further apart. So I remember at the time thinking, but All Lives Matter, and I couldn't understand what was going on. And then someone had put on social media, when we say Black Lives Matter, we mean all lives matter. And I was thinking, then why don't you say it in a different way? But if nobody can talk about it, if instead it becomes this, I'm right, you're wrong, then we're just polarized. Nothing changes.
And we need to be able to come together
That's
as a
right.
community and talk about things. What's this one? About the comment.
I'll put this up for you.
Thank you.
About the comment around Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter, when we focus only on one area where this is happening, does that create an imbalance elsewhere? Could it lead to the pendulum swinging to the other end instead of finding balance?
Okay, I'm going to throw something into the equation here because I'm old. Many years ago, I used to work for a government department in England at the time that people were kicked out of Kenya and Uganda. And when they came to the UK, they were taken care of, absolutely, because they were British citizens, they had British passports. But what started to happen was that if they went for a job and somebody, and usually somebody that was white went for a job, the white person didn't get the job because of sympathy for the person that had lost everything. So even if they weren't qualified, they were given the job because people were trying to do the right thing.
But now they're mandating that, Helen.
Yeah, but you think about it, what does that create?
Well, it creates...
If you've got the qualifications and the job's given to somebody that hasn't because you feel sorry for them, first of all, you diminish that person because it would be better to help them find something where their skills can shine. And you're diminishing the person that's applied because now he's being told, or she's being told, doesn't matter what qualifications you've got, you're going to get a job based on emotion.
It's still discrimination, isn't it?
It is. It's total discrimination. But both are in that situation, both are discriminated against. Because one's told you're only getting the job because you're poor soul, and the other's told you're not getting the job because you're privileged. That's never going to solve anything. And so free people, thanks Sharon, I knew it was a joke, but anyway, free speech needs people to listen. We need to be able to talk to each other, but we need to be able to hear each other. What do you reckon, Tanya?
Absolutely. And
my name is Tanya. I said Tandy.
Sorry, I thought you said Tanya.
I'm really getting into this.
Oh, you're speech. You go, girl.
No, Helen, I agree. I understand why the qualified person would feel angry that the unqualified person is coming in to take their job. Look, it's happening in this part of the world as well. In South Africa, they're trying to empower the Black people, but unfortunately, the Black people are giving jobs that they're not qualified to do, and therefore standards are dropping, and everyone's getting angry. And I don't know, what to do. But I think you're right, Helen. People should not feel sorry for people. I think people should be encouraged to get the qualification so that they're able to compete equally or fairly. But it's getting the people to get the qualification, which is another conversation as well, because they have to go through the whole process of being educated and trained, and that takes time. But in the meantime, people are getting angry because they're not able to get the jobs that everybody else is.
Do you think part of it too is that they don't actually stop and look at what that person's actually already qualified for? When we were in Australia, I was treated by a Chinese doctor. I got very sick very quickly, and I was very, very fortunate that I had a friend who took me to see this person. What he did, he didn't give me any drugs, but what he did, how he treated me was, I would say without exaggeration, saved my life. But he can't practice in Australia because he qualified in Beijing. His wife is a gynecologist. Both of them serve Chinese meals in a Chinese restaurant because their qualifications aren't considered up to the standard of Australia. And I don't have a problem with that, but they're not given the opportunity to update those qualifications so they can do that. So the whole system is led, I think it's all led by emotion instead of by discernment.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sonia says here, they brand the hiring out of sympathy as positive discrimination. It's discrimination. Like, yeah, it's still, but it's still, the word is still there. It's still discrimination.
Yeah.
I think positive discrimination is a load of tosh.
If the word discrimination is there, it's discrimination.
Yeah.
But it makes people feel better, Helen. And as long as we're going to be in the emotional body, we are going to have things like positive discrimination.
But if I'm giving you something because I feel sorry for you, if that's how we start to run things, we're going to go down and down and down and down.
That is how we're running
There's
things.
no aspiration.
No.
There's no motivating people, supporting and helping them. So when they want to share their point of view on anything like Tanya, they're shut down. It's not just about Black Lives Matter where people get shut down. Somebody that we know was having a bit of a conversation on Facebook with friends. And one of their friends said, oh, perhaps this will happen. And the person's response was, fat chance. They were deleted. Their account was deleted because they used the word fat. And fat is abusive.
Well, you know, Helen, I've got a teenage daughter and I'm dealing with, not personally, but a lot of her friends are doing this transgender thing where there's a whole bunch of these teenage girls that are now deciding that they want to be males. And I only heard yesterday about a case in the UK where a 15-year-old girl was identifying as a male. Her father accidentally called her she, and he was arrested and is facing possible jail time because she went to the police and put in a formal complaint against her own father for calling her she.
I'm going to say this. I feel sorry for all of you because I'm 71 and I'm not going to put up with this rubbish for much longer.
Yeah, but you could live 110, 120.
But
No.
this is the world that like our young
world we're
children
allowed.
are going into.
It's the world we're allowing. It's not that our children are going into. It's a world we're allowing because people are afraid to say what they think
Yeah.
because they'll get trolled or cancelled or whatever
trashed,
the
deleted.
latest.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Or arrested.
Arrested, lose their jobs, you know,
Yeah.
which is a huge one here in Australia at the moment, you know.
Yeah.
People-
A lot of people are losing jobs over the gender issue because they say she instead of he, or
What's
he
the-
instead of she.
What's the one in Australia, to Annam, just before we get to Elaine's? What's the one in Australia?
Oh, what was I going to say? I just lost the thread, sorry.
Losing jobs, you were saying, Anam.
Oh, yeah, losing jobs. So just with the whole sexual abuse thing that's going on in Australia now with the parliament and people just protesting, women protesting in the streets that they're not, you know, so people are resigning, asked to step down, left, right and centre, you know, it's happening and it's still continuing, you know, these cases against historical rape. Yeah, I think Mr. Morrison is in hiding, I think. You know, there are so many problems
It's
that
Pandora's
we're
box.
facing. Oh, you couldn't have. That is so true, Helen. Pandora's box. That is so true. Yeah, so true.
So when I went for my first job after Julian was born and I went back to work, so he started school, I went to apply for a job. And one of the questions at the interview was, how do we know you're not going to get pregnant and we're going to have to pay you? And I said, how do I know you're not going to get pregnant? This was to a guy. You're not going to get pregnant. And my taxpayer money is going to have to pay you.
Did you get the job?
I did. He looked at me and he said, what? And I said, that's an offensive question.
Yeah.
And he said, men can't get pregnant. I said, well, sometimes women can't either. I said, and that shouldn't be something they have to tell you to get a job. And he went, I think we need to employ you as the conscience. That was the attitude even then.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think we've learned a lot. So Elaine's comment.
Sorry, Elaine, we were talking about the younger generation. She
Yeah.
was saying, so when things are not brought out to be discussed like this, what happens to the young generation that are not yet equipped or mature enough to look at these issues? How will they be able to determine discrimination?
Well, first you've got to get past their, and all teenagers
Yeah,
know everything,
yeah,
and their parents know nothing.
Three
And so,
teenagers at home.
and so it's about saying to kids, when you get to 40, you're entitled to an opinion.
Yeah.
Now that's free speech, not with a vengeance.
Yeah.
But it's about, kids aren't taught to discuss things.
No. There's I find it interesting when people say, oh, we actually eat together as a family. We make it a habit or we make it important. I just think, but I thought everybody sat and ate together.
No, they don't.
Like that's really become unusual.
No,
And
they
because
don't.
there isn't the sitting around together, nothing gets talked about.
No, we used to sit and talk about our day with each other. I mean, not when Julian was little, obviously he didn't have a lot to talk about. But as he got older, he did. And so we would talk about it. And Tony and I would discuss things in front of him and share our opinion. And Tony and I didn't always agree. In fact, we very rarely agree, but that's what probably gives us a good marriage. And Julian would then be the one in the middle that would decide, and he solved it beautifully. He'd say, Mom, today it's your turn to win. Dad, tomorrow it's your turn to win. So, yeah. But what it did was it gave the opportunity to look at things. We take ourselves so seriously now, don't we? Mandy, what do you think? You've not said a lot.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mandy?
I find that really
Frozen.
Yeah. Look,
Yo. You know, the same as when we had my kids were little too, and I encouraged them to talk and have an opinion. But then, of course, the conversation used to get pretty loud with 5 people around the table. And the point that I used to try and get through to them, it's great to have an opinion, but you've got to remember it doesn't mean that it's right or someone else is wrong within that.
we all have
I don't
our
know
own
that
thing.
I've taught them that well because they're a bit older now, and I still have to remind them of that. And I have found the older I get, the less I know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's remind them, you know, it's a really good opportunity to express yourself, but you don't have to punch somebody in the head if they don't agree with you.
No.
But
Tiny,
that's what's happening now on social media.
yeah.
They're cyberbullying and it's going like crazy. And kids are using social media to get their opinions from rather than their parents.
yeah.
And it's not only kids.
Just
So I'm now getting thoroughly
Yeah.
Because
depressed.
they can hide behind.
Screen.
So how do we change it? We started a conversation like this a couple of months ago. How do we help the kids without preaching and teaching that free speech is a gift and something to treasure? and that we learn by sharing opposing ideas if we listen.
Mm.
How do we do that?
Could we ask, like, be more curious, come from the bias of being curious rather than sort of trying to defend our own point? Like, if somebody says something that we don't agree with, it's ask the question, well, what do you mean? Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, we could, but you know what happens after that, don't you? They tell you what they think, and you say, well, that's really good. This is how I see it. Do they listen?
Maybe not.
I don't know. I don't think a lot of them do, because they follow certain influences and they absorb what that influencer says.
Mm.
And it's difficult for them to stand against somebody that they see as an important influencer.
Mm. So that peer pressure on a
It is.
massive scale.
It's
actually,
huge, yeah.
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 So I think that the pandemic has failed in one really big area. I think the virus should have got into social media and made it stick so they couldn't use it, and they would have to talk to people.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say the virus should have hit younger children.
No.
I thought you were not going to say that.
I think the virus should have social media, and then the kids would have to talk to people, and perhaps there's a point there where you can say to them, well, tell me how you see it that way and why, and let's talk about it.
It's also about helping them to understand how to have a conversation with their peers that isn't about judgment. So it's a little bit like what Tracy was saying. I said it to one of my kids about a topic, and I said, you can have the conversation and just say, look, I just don't know very much about this, and have a chat about it. You don't have to go in and think, oh God, that's a bit weird. You can actually have it on a different level. I think a lot of younger people don't necessarily know anymore how to have a conversation that's constructive, because they're living in this social media world where everybody is on top of each other and I'm right, you're wrong. So part of it is helping younger people to understand there are different ways of conversing that aren't only about screens and I hate you, and there's so much of that out there.
The problem is that so much of social media has been hijacked, I guess, by a small number of people that seem to have an enormous amount of power, and their opinion has now been infiltrated into the minds of all these young people. And there are so many parents and even kids out there who disagree with what's being said, but it's like trying to get beyond that that influence that's coming from the top down, from these influencers, which really are just a very small minority.
I think this is a good comment of Anita's. No, it's not
Sorry,
that one, the one above.
This one. Sorry, this is the one.
No, words are now being... Words are now being used as weapons rather than for communication. I think that's true.
Very true.
It's a valid point.
Yeah.
So the answer obviously is this. Are we ready for this?
Yeah.
The answer is that we form our voice. We get everybody we know to agree with us and join with us.
Yes.
And we start talking about conversation and debate and free speech as a means of loving interaction. And we become the best influencer in the whole world.
No problem.
Take over social media. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I've got a YouTube channel. I'll start.
I think conversation itself. Yeah. Just to be having these conversations that doesn't descend into chaos, that actually everybody here is communicating, chatting, conversing, sharing ideas. And more of this out there would actually be something that says, look, you can actually do this and nobody's killing each other at the end.
But the problem is people who do say that get shut down by social media.
Well, Tanya, It's not a problem because you know what? We can find other ways.
Yes,
We've
there
been
are
talk-
other ways.
We've been talking about this because I want to come off Facebook. I don't like the unkindness of it. So we've been doing a bit of an exploration of how we can make that happen. And hopefully by next month we can start telling people because we'll have got it right, as in we know what we're talking about. But how does everybody feel that's connecting to us at the moment? What do you feel this is a hopeless task, talking about free speech? Or is it possible that we might find a way of starting to talk about free speech in multiple ways to get a conversation going that isn't hijacked into he said, she said, who's right, who's wrong? And so it's respectful of everyone. What does the audience feel about this? They've probably all gone home to bed now. Because you've got to be able to have a laugh as well while you're doing this. You know, not.
You just need good moderators as well. You know, somebody who will watch, moderate, and be like, okay, let's just go back into where we were. Who's willing to actually pull it back. I think the moderator, well, debating, yeah, and I think moderators are really important to be able to bring people out of, okay, now we've descended into he said, she said, what are we actually here to talk about, you know? So, but I don't think it's hopeless. But
I think it starts with, I don't know who this person is because they didn't tell us their
this
name.
one I'm up on.
I think it starts with looking at where our energy stands because that's what we're sharing with our kids, for example.
Yeah.
And having dinner table discussions that are real might help, but having any discussion that's real might help. And what's that movie?
Moxie. I've never heard of that movie. Moxie. A really good movie that does this well is Moxie, standing up for what you believe.
Well, perhaps we start doing that. One of the things that we want to start doing is to create a good news channel. And we're working on that, and it's open to anybody that wants to good news. And to start to get positive stuff flowing instead of you're either. I think George W. Bush started more than he knew when he said, "You're either with us or you're against us."
Yeah, didn't help. The other thing is somebody was saying about being shut down. I also think part of it is you can shut yourself down.
Yeah.
So if you're not willing to be shut down, no matter what people say, then that's going to make a difference too. Yeah. But when you're shut down, and also when young people see you, when you're like the younger generation, or your kids see you being shut down and you going with it, then you have no hope.
No.
That's it. Like,
no.
I think
Go on,
no.
Go on, Anna.
Oh, I think the idea is to try and keep more steps ahead, you know, like be really creative, because we're trying to fit into this like a box, you know, a Facebook box, whatever box is there. And then once upon a time it may have been fun, but now we're really being reeled in, you know, by these and so much limitation. And I think if we can, I love your idea, Helen, about the news channel and, offering all sorts of topical conversations, you know, here's Helen Barton bringing this great conversation, 10 a.m. in the morning, you know, we're going to get up and we're going to talk about whatever it's going to be and bringing in people that can talk about those things, how to open up the conversation.
Anna?
She's scheduling you.
But no, I think it's, and it doesn't have to be me. It can be a group of us. But the point is, and this is something, if we are going to start to talk about free speech, it's no good just doing it like this. And it's not just about one or two people doing it. So good news is about anybody contributing that wants to share something constructive and positive. It doesn't have to be me. It doesn't have to be Tony. It can be anybody. And we can start putting forward suggestions. And I want to start doing more topics like this on the Insight Teachings Facebook, because I think I think we need to talk about stuff that if we don't, it's going to become taboo and we can't talk about it.
Yeah.
And so we close ourselves down. What you're saying, if parents do it, so do communities.
Well, if you're doing it as the parent and you're doing it as the adults in the community, and you're allowing yourself to be shut down, then that's the end of it, because it's dying out already. So
my husband made the observation that how similar is this to what happened in Nazi Germany?
Well, glad you said that, Tanya, because I was just going to say, what did we fight a war for?
Freedom of speech.
The freedom to be able to say what we think, not unkindly. It's not about that, but it's being able to have a conversation and not be told how to think. Whereas what's happening nowadays with these influencers, we're being told how to think.
Yeah.
We're being told what we should support. And, I've got something in here that's called a brain. And that brain enables me to be discerning, to think about things and to form my own opinions. And that means I can't be manipulated by people. Well, theoretically, I might. While we don't use this, we're at the mercy of everybody else. What's the point?
Yeah.
And it's the younger generation that we really need to reach out to and somehow connect with, because they're the future.
Yeah, they are. They're there. But the trouble with that is the younger generation have been fed on demand.
Absolutely.
And whatever's the latest fad, they want feeding. There's no stepping back and looking at it and how can this help me? How can this help me help other people? A lot of them are very thoughtful and caring kids, but a lot of them aren't. Because if they're not given the opportunity to show that. What do you reckon, Tracy? You're sitting there quietly.
The idea of a good news channel, yes, I think that would be very carving a new path, starting just with baby steps, and it'll be beneficial, or just keep going with it.
So who's going to put the stuff up for the teenagers? Oh, don't I love that?
Gosh.
I'd be happy to work with somebody on that.
Okay, so and it doesn't, let's have a lot of people.
I have a lot
that want to put stuff in there. And
a format that makes that really easy for people to talk, chat, discuss, add stuff. Yeah.
And we'll gradually start to build.
I listen. That would be great. I have a lot of conversation with my granddaughter, who's the eldest one's 15, and she's got an amazing capacity to have different conversations and to be open to lots of opinions and ideas. And she actually just presented in her classroom last week a topic on Facebook, and got down to the algorithms, that Facebook do and everything, and just opened it up to the kids in the class. A lot of them would know this stuff, and really brought it down on a social issue, a lot of social issues and emotional issues. She brought it to the table. She's a really good debater, and so I would love to have conversations with her. She would help me enormously, to think about the teenagers, etc.
Okay. Well, we haven't heard from anybody in the audience about what we can do.
Elaine says there are a number of animations that discuss race and kindness, etc. Perhaps even encourage discussion about issues using these kinds of tools.
So, Elaine, if you could let me know where to find those. Perhaps you and I could have a conversation about that. That could be very good. Any comments anybody has? No. So, final thought from each of you about, first of all, did we talk about expectation or ego? Or did we just go off on one? So how do you feel? Final thoughts for the interview.
We probably got slightly sidetracked, but I think they were still important things to discuss, and they still revolve around the idea of free speech, which is eroding very fast. And I think it's a great idea that we find a way of doing something about it, because if we don't, then what are we losing?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Next.
Yeah, I don't feel. Oh,
Go on.
me. Yeah, I feel we didn't explore a lot around expectation and ego, but going off more, concentrating on free speech and what is happening with it, looking at what's happening and some of the consequences, and then the next step is to look at what we can do to create a new working model. And I feel we need to get out from under the influence of Facebook, because they're really regulating it in a big way. Like, I'm in a group, it's a fashion design group and sewing education, and within the group, the lead designer or expert sewer, pattern maker, is not allowed to use the word fat or use a demonstration of a graphic. If you sew this kind of swimsuit and put it on this size model, yes, it'll work, that look will work. But if you're going to add 4 sizes, it doesn't work on this model for this reason. And Facebook threatened to close his group down because they said that's body shaming.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And some woman who is a sewer, a member of the group, said, hey, look, here's a photo of me. And she made humour and light of it and made a joke, because she was saying, this is teaching a very important point to construct garments for all women of all shapes and sizes and ages. And he nearly got shut down again for that comment. And they said, oh, that was a comedy post disguised as body shaming, and it's not acceptable on our platform.
We definitely, by next month, will have a solution for us. If anybody's interested.
Oh my
But
God.
yeah, it's disgraceful.
That's worse than I even thought it
Oh,
was.
no.
God.
And he is sharing all his wisdom, and he's an expert,
Yeah, but
a master at it.
Tracy, it's not about that. It's about control.
Yeah.
Facebook has an expectation that we will all do as we're told, and it doesn't want us to have an ego that wants to do our own thing. There you go. Expectation.
They have the expectation, and they've got an ego about it.
Yeah.
So there's
It's
Hang
because
on,
it's
no,
free.
don't start a whole new conversation.
No, because it's free. That's why they have that expectation that we will do, we're told. Because they're like, we gave it to you for free. That's where it comes from. It's that power thing. Good night, everybody.
No, we haven't listened to the rest of them yet. Mandy.
Mandy frozen?
Mandy.
I think we're talking about ego. Me?
Yeah, go for it.
Me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. I was speaking, but it must not have. Me?
Keep going.
Ah, it is me. It's
Yes.
feedback. I've got one of those ratty networks. I think we're talking about ego expectations.
Yeah.
Not expectation versus ego. It's ego expectations. We're just not allowed to be anything other than what that ego expects. That outer ego, that outer world ego, says we can be.
Yeah. Sad, isn't it? Thank you. Next.
Yes, we veered away from expectations, but I've really enjoyed the conversation because, of course, we were talking about the personality, which is ego, which always comes in when when you're talking and conversing with other people. Yeah. So it's just it's a matter of learning to listen and having those difficult conversations. And having a sense of humor about it.
Yeah, I think a sense of humor is essential. If you're going to have sensitive conversations, you've got to have a sense of humor. Okay. Have we had everybody? What about Ola?
Good night, everybody. Well, what did you expect with my ego?
My expectation is that next month Ola will not be here.
My evil plan has worked.
I think we talked about both.
Yeah.
I think we talked about expectation. The kids have an expectation that we will see things their way.
Yeah.
We have an expectation that the kids will see things our way.
Yeah.
Everybody has expectations. The point, the midline between an expectation and an ego is when you find a point within the two where your expectation realistically assists everyone equally to move forward. So no ego is dispossessed. Everything comes together, and the expectation and the ego come together in a way that takes us forward inclusively, not exclusively. At the moment, free speech is exclusively in the hands of those who believe they control it.
Yeah.
And I think it's time we started making it more inclusive.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, well, thank you for joining this rowdy meeting. Thank you, Tandy and Tanya, for getting up so early to do so. And,
My pleasure.
And for the three Aussies who won't be invited back because they're Aussies, women are struggling in Australia and they between them haven't solved the problem yet. There's an expectation. But yes,
I'll probably get fired anyway.
Yeah. But we'll come back to you about the good news. And if any of you that's listening have anything you'd like to contribute, get in touch with us and let us know. And is there another topic you want us to talk about next month? Or are we going to carry on bemoaning the death of free speech? Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.